talk about having skin in the game. Talk to me about when you had that F it moment. I know you talked about that TEDx talk. Like, talk to me when you were like, all right, I'm going all in on publishing and helping in that space, specifically when it comes to hybrid publishing it.
Yeah, exactly. The F it moment was for me about leaving traditional publishing, and it was a building up for me because I was having to reject books that I really thought should be published.
Mm.
And so you get into this tense situation as an acquiring editor when you bring in books that you love and you really want them to move ahead, but they get rejected by the marketing department or they get rejected by the corporate entity for reasons having to do with money, or they think that there's not enough audience, or they will say like, oh, okay, well, we've already done a book very similar to that in the last year or two or three. And so those are frustrating moments for editors for sure. So I had one in particular. It's the story of my TEDx talk that was the straw that broke the camel's back, because it was a book about trans families. The author was a trans man. And I really loved this book. I thought it was important. We hadn't done something like that before. And I had been tasked with building our LGBTQ list. And so when they said, essentially, we don't want it, you can acquire it, but it's on you if it fails. It was this really strange moment where I just felt very unsupported, and like this book that seemed like a slam dunk obvious choice to me was getting shut down. And so from that point forward, I just was disillusioned. I was seeing much more interesting things happening in the non-traditional space. And I think a lot of people have that F it moment, in different capacities, right? And it just like your thinking shifts all of a sudden, and new possibilities open up that maybe you didn't see before.
Yeah, I think it's so important because otherwise those stories don't get told, right? And because there's that level of, at least when, and it seems like from a traditional standpoint, that level of gatekeeping versus when you go to a hybrid publishing model, you have the backing and help of a publisher, but you can do it in different unique ways. Can you talk a little bit about like I guess the myths or like the different routes of like when it comes to the gatekeeping in traditional publishing versus how hybrid publishing allows you to have more flexibility
Yeah, definitely. I mean, the gatekeeping in traditional publishing has just gotten more and more constricted, or more difficult to penetrate, right? And it makes sense because of their business model, right? I mean, that is the difference between like the hybrid business model allows authors to have more collaboration and more creative control because they're investing. And so it feels more like a co-publishing relationship, right? It's like the author is coming and saying, I'm going to put some money into this and see where it goes. But the publisher, as long as it is a legitimate good hybrid, is saying, we have the relationships, we have the distribution, we have all the mechanisms in place, the infrastructure that you need to be a successful author. So in that way, that kind of collaboration is very different than the traditional publishing side, where we're saying, we choose you and we're going to give you money. It could be a little, it could be a lot. But what happens in the we choose you and the we're going to give you money and we're paying for everything is that there's an expectation there, obviously, of success. And if and when the author does not have success, the publisher is unlikely to continue to support them, will usually not publish their second book. So it sets up a dynamic, it really comes down to a power dynamic in a sense. And if an author is selling books for their publisher, that power dynamic is going to stay either even, or sometimes the author has more power, but more often than not, the publisher has more power. And so on the hybrid side, I think there's a more even power dynamic, and or the author is saying, look, I'm investing, I have skin in the game. So like that whole paradigm that we're talking about of skin in the game, to me, I just prefer to work with authors who have that incentive, and that wherewithal. And I think it makes for more proactive authors and kind of a more exciting publishing experience.
Yeah, it's so interesting. So, and that trickles down, right? So we work with a lot of content creators in the book space that end up promoting, whether it's advanced reader copies or just authors that they really love. But that comes down to it because then the content creators are basically given a lot of their marketing for free in that sense because of all these trickle down effects that happen in publishing. If you enjoyed that clip, make sure you head over to www.bookupapp.com to download our app so you can connect with your favorite bookish content creators, start conversations, and start your own book club.